You are now listening to The Forefront Radio, where we discuss history, the Bible, the history of the Israelites, science, and other matters. Bring it out. The history of the blacks, Hispanics, and Native Americans as it relates to the Bible. Who were you prior to slavery? Who were you prior to colonization? These answers and more can be seen and heard as you listen to The Forefront Radio.
Shalom, shalom. Welcome to the Forefront Radio. Welcome to the Forefront Radio. I'm your host, Aphiel Levi. Hope everybody's doing all right. So today's episode is called They Know Who We Are, revealing the hidden truth of Black history and the Afro-Hebraic diaspora. Once again, welcome to the Forefront Radio. I'm your host, Aphiel Levi Israel. I hope everybody's doing all right. Y'all ready for another episode today? We are live on YouTube, y'all. We are live on YouTube, and we're going to talk about today the topic, They Know Who We Are. They know it already, y'all. They know it already. They know who we are. They've been trying to hide who we are for centuries, y'all. They've been trying to hide this information. They've been trying to ban people, y'all. We got people that's out in the streets teaching in France, and France is trying to ban you from teaching Black history according to the Bible. Why are they scared of a bunch of Black folks with Bibles, y'all? If what we're teaching is not relevant to the community, why would they ban it? Why would they try to ban in France groups like IUIC from teaching the Bible from an Afro-Hebraic perspective if it wasn't impacting the people, y'all? Think about it for a second. Why is there a vast agenda to block anybody that's speaking on the Afro-Hebraic experience? Think about it, y'all. You got prominent people like Kanye West, Kyrie Irving, Ice Cube, Fantasia. All of these celebrities are saying the same thing. Nick Cannon, when Nick Cannon said it with Professor Griff, guess what happened? They took him off the air. He had his own radio show. They say Viacom said, shut him down. We don't want him to reveal the truth, y'all. They know who we are. So today we're going to get into a couple of key things. Number one, the untold truth of Black identity in biblical history. Once again, we're going to touch on the truth that they know, which is the untold. Watch this. Discover how people of so-called African descent, Black descent, are represented in the Bible and why this history has been hidden. Very important that we're going to discuss today, y'all. Watch this. Number two, evidence of the Afro-Hebraic presence throughout Scripture. So we're going to explore scriptural references that point to a Hebrew lineage among so-called African and diaspora communities. Very exciting, y'all. Very intriguing information. Number three, we are going to discuss how colonialism and religion shaped and distorted historical narratives. Learn how colonial powers rewrote religious and historical texts to suppress the true origins of a particular demographic of people. Who was it? The people that they call so-called Black. The people that they call so-called Native Indigenous, the people that they call so-called African, y'all. Very important information, y'all. Make sure you follow us. If you haven't subscribed to the Forefront Radio, subscribe now. Subscribe to the Forefront Radio, where the truth does not fear investigation, y'all. And the last point that we'll touch on for today's broadcast is going to be number 4, powerful powerful insights that challenge mainstream doctrine. This episode questions traditional religious teachings and offers a new, not so new because it's already in the Bible, but a valid perspective rooted in historical truth. And we're going to back it up with the Bible and secondary sources, y'all. That's what we're going to do today on the Forefront Radio. So please, if you're new to the Forefront Radio, make sure you subscribe to our podcast. The Forefront Radio started in 2020 as a Diaspora news channel. We teach Blacks, Hispanics, and Native Americans that you are the lost tribes of Israel according to the Bible. We teach Black history, Hispanic history, and for a long period of time, this information has been hidden. Why? Because they know who you are. They know who we are, y'all. So let's get right into it, y'all. The first article we're going to touch on is France's colonial policy in Africa. And what we'll do while we do that is we're going to touch on biblical passages that coincide with what we're reading in this document. So let's go to it real quick. We're going to share the screen so y'all can see it for yourself. You know how they say seeing is believing? Y'all, when we say these nations know who we are, we're not making it up. Watch this. The Ministry of Foreign Affairs of the Russian Federation. That means Russia knows this information, y'all. Russia documented it carefully and worded it in a way that only an individual that is studious will know what they're talking about. You understand? Only somebody that's paying attention and can find out the underhanded tactics of what they're doing can see what's going on. So watch this. Let's share the screen real quick so y'all can see it. Ministry of Defense. Let me get a couple of ones in the chat from the audience just to make sure it's clear. Let me get a couple of ones in the chat just to make sure y'all can see it on the channel. Can everybody see it? Can everybody see it? Let me get a couple of ones in the chat just to make sure y'all can see what is on the screen. All right. Ministry of Foreign Affairs of the Russian Federation. This is from June 2024. France's colonial policy in Africa. So Russia, who's not associated with France in any other way, is documenting something dealing with France and how France exploited the continent of Africa. Very important information, y'all. Do you think this would be something exciting for us to look into? Let's look right into it, y'all. Let's look into this thing. Quote, France, traditionally a key player in Africa, has a major impact on the political life and economic development of African countries due to historically established ties. Now, for those that are familiar with history, what are some of those ties that France had? Exploitation, colonialism, and slavery, meaning the political basis of many African nations, so-called African nations, all across the planet that have been colonized is directly tied to exploitation, resource sabotage. Because you see this? Watch this. A lot of times when they talk about so-called Black countries, so-called African countries, they use terms like under the developed. They use terms like the global South. But let's be honest, y'all. Africa wasn't underdeveloped. It was literally over exploited. That's the difference, y'all. It was not underdeveloped, meaning they already had kings, they already had princes, they already had kingdoms that they established throughout the continent and in parts of Asia and in parts of Europe. But then those of France and other polities, other nation states, decided to diminish them, exploit them, and cause them to become underdeveloped, aka overly exploited. Watch this. The history of African continent, perhaps more than any other, is full of cataclysms and reversals that radically change the lives of indigenous peoples and determine the course of their further development. In the 15th century, that means the 1400s, this included a large scale European penetration into tropical Africa and the slave trade, which brought immeasurable misery to the inhabitants of the continent. So, what is this telling us in a nutshell? This is basically saying that France had a role in exploiting Africa as well as all the other so called settler nations. Well, I call them invaders. I call them invading nations, right? But they call themselves soft terms, colonizers. That's what they call them, right? We're just gonna make a colony. We're just gonna hang out and be friends, right? Y'all, they know who we are. These nations that are on the planet, y'all, they know who we are. They can't hide it anymore. They cannot hide it anymore, y'all. They know exactly who we are. Watch this. I told you I was going to show it to you in the Bible, right? So let's do that. Let's show it to you in the Bible. We're going to go over biblical passages that parallel what we just read. So that means it's already documented in the book, but most Christian pastors will not teach it. They avoid it. They say, don't read the Old Testament. Don't show the presence of Afro-Hebraic people. But guess what? We're not afraid to reveal it, y'all. Because the Bible says you're going to know the truth, and the truth will make you what? Free. The truth will make you free. Y'all, they know who we are and they're trying to hide it. But guess what? They can't hide it anymore, baby. Watch this. Let's add this screen real quick so y'all can see what we're talking about. Let's add this so y'all can see what we're talking about real quick. Let's add this. All right. Can everybody see the scriptures on the screen? Let me get a couple of ones in the chat. If you can see the scriptures on the screen, let me get a couple of ones in the chat. If y'all can see the scriptures on the screen, let's get a couple of ones in the chat just to make sure y'all can see it. All right. So the first text of scripture that we're going to get into is the book of Genesis, chapter 2, verse 7. And it reads, and the Lord God formed man of the dust of the ground and breathed into his nostrils the breath of life, and man became a living soul. So, right at the beginning of the book, y'all, right at the beginning of the text is telling us that God formed man of the dust of the ground. What color is the soil of the earth? What color is the dust of the ground? Different shades of black and brown, y'all. From the deep, dark, rich soil of Africa to the red clay of Georgia, the Bible says God made man of the dust of the ground. You know why that's significant? It's significant because we read in the Bible about a particular tribe that Jesus the Christ, Yahushua or Yeshua, came from. What tribe was that? The tribe of Judah. So let's read out of the Bible. What is the physical description of the tribe of Judah? Guess what? They're not going to read this in church. You're not going to hear this on Sunday school. They avoid it. They don't pass by it. They say, don't read it. Don't tell them what it says. Don't let them know that this is talking about them. They don't want you to know this information, y'all. They don't want you to know it at all. They've tried to hide it for centuries, y'all. They tried to hide this thing for centuries, but we're going to bring it out on the forefront radio. We're going to bring it out on the forefront radio. Watch this. Go to Jeremiah. Jeremiah chapter 14, verse 2. It says, Judah mourneth, and the gates thereof languish. They are black. What does the Bible say? They are black. What does the Bible say? They are black unto the ground. And the cry of Jerusalem is gone up. You know what's significant about this? A pastor will read this and they'll say, oh, forefront, this is talking about the gates. I'm like, wait, hold on a second. The very next verse, verse 3 says, and their nobles have sent their little ones. Is this talking about gates or is this talking about people? It says their nobles. So the tribe of Judah, the nobles, that's the elders, and their little ones, that's going into what? Their children, so their descendants, they are black unto the ground. Black just like the soil of the earth, just like we read in Genesis. Just like we read. Why they never read that to you in church? My pastor never said that forefront. I ain't never heard that before in my life. Because they're hiding information from us. They're hiding the truth of the matter. They don't want you to know that Black history is in the Bible. Watch this. Let's go to another one. Let's go to the book of Genesis, scriptural passages that reveal Black history, chapter 2. Let's read verse 13. Genesis chapter 2. Let's read verse 13 about the Garden of Eden and rivers flowing in the Garden of Eden. Watch this. It says, and the name of the second river is Gihon. That's the river Nile. That's the river Nile. The same is it that compasseth the whole land of Ethiopia. Wait a minute, y'all. Hold on a second. Where is Ethiopia? Is it in Azerbaijan? Is it in Iraq or Assyria, like they say? Or is it in the continent of Africa? Y'all, last time I checked, you got Ethiopia, Eritrea, Congo, Chad, Sudan, Uganda, Malawi, Nigeria. That's Africa, y'all. Israel is right next door to Egypt, which is next door to Chad and Sudan and Libya and Eritrea and Uganda. And y'all, that's Africa. That's Africa. It's closer to Africa than it is to Europe. Let me say it again for the kids in the back. It's closer to Africa than it is to Europe. You understand? If you get it, you get it. If you don't, you don't. Watch this. Now let's look at the parallels between the children of Israel and Ethiopia, aka the continent of Africa. Let's go to Amos chapter 9, verse 7. Let's go to Amos chapter 9. Let's read verse 7. And it reads, are you not as children of the Ethiopians unto me, O children of Israel? What does the Bible say? Are you not as, meaning just like, don't you look like the children of the Ethiopians unto me, O children of Israel? Saith the Lord. Who said it? God said it. Who said it? God said it. Saith Yahweh. Saith the Most High Yah. Who said it? The Creator, Christ. Have not I brought up Israel out of Egypt? Wait a minute, y'all. Egypt is in the continent of Africa. Egypt is in the continent of Africa. Then it says, and the Philistines from Caphtor and the Syrians from Ker. Let's look up the Philistines real quick. Who are the Philistines? And what are they? Who are they the descendants of? Let's find out. AKA the real Palestinians, the Philistines, Palestine. Let's find out who these people are. Let's go to Genesis chapter 10. So we got the comparison between the children of Israel and being enslaved in Egypt. That's in Africa. We got the children of Israel being compared to Black Ethiopians. That's in Africa. Now let's find out about Ethiopia, shall we? Philistines, rather, shall we? It says, Genesis chapter 10, verse 6. And it reads, and the sons of Ham, Cush, that's Ethiopia, and Mizraim, that's the land of Egypt and Pathros, and Foot, that's Libya, and Canaan, that's the land of Palestine. Canaan, the land of Palestine, all the way up to Turkey. That was the original land of Canaan. Now, let's jump down to where it talks about the Philistine. Watch this. Let's jump down to verse 13. It says, and Mizraim begat Ludim. Mizraim is going into what? Egypt, ancient Egypt, the black Kemetic people, and Anamim, and Lehabim, and Naphtuhim, and Pathrusim. That's where we get the term Pathros. And Kasluhim, out of whom came Philistine and Caphtorim. Remember, he said, didn't I bring the Philistines out of Caphtor? Philistine is a direct relative to Mizraim. Mizra is Egypt. Egypt is Africa, Sudan, connected to Cush, connected to the land of Ham. Wait a minute. So God, let's go back. Let's do this comparison. Let's break it down to a fraction. Let's go back to Amos. You can't make this stuff up. Why they never taught us that in church? Amos chapter 9. Let's read verse 7 again. It says, are you not as children of the Ethiopians unto me? O children of Israel, saith the Lord. Who said it? God said it. Who said it? God said it. Who said it? God said it. God compared the children of Israel. Ask your Christian pastor, why did God compare the sons and daughters of Jacob to black Ethiopians? Have not I brought up Israel out of the land of Egypt? Why did God have to remind you that he took the descendants of the sons and daughters of Jacob out of Egypt, which is in Africa? Hey, and the Philistines, who are the direct relatives to the Egyptians, the black ones, not these new Arabs that moved in around 700 AD, not these Turks that moved, these Ottoman Turks that moved in recent times, not these Romans and Greeks that invaded during the time of Alexander the Greek. We're talking way, way back. Blackest of black Africa. The same folks they call Sudanese and Watusi and all of this stuff right here, right? Yeah, that black. Blue black. Yeah. We was hanging around them folks. So the children of Israel, number one, are compared to black Ethiopians. Number two, God tells them they came out of the land of Egypt, which is next to Sudan, next to Eritrea, next to Libya, next to Nubia, right? Then he mentions the Philistines, which are direct relatives to the black Egyptians. Then he mentions the Syrians from Ker. So the original Syrians weren't these Lebanese, European, Greek folks. No. The original Syrians were black too, because guess what? Abraham had a relative named Laban. Laban was uncle to Jacob, and Laban was a Syrian, a black Syrian at that. If you get it, you get it. If you don't, you don't. This is some of the stuff that folks tried to hide, y'all. But guess what? The jig is up. The jig is up. We know you tried to hide black history, but you can't do it no more. You can't do it no more. They know who we are. It's in the Bible. They know it. Let's go back to the article of France's colonial policy in Africa. Let's go back to the article of France's colonial policy in the continent of Africa. Very interesting information that we're going to cover today on the Forefront Radio. We just covered part one of the discussion, going into the untold biblical based evidence, right? Then we went to part two, which was the evidence in the scriptures itself. Now we're dealing with part three, which is how colonialism shaped or distorted historical narratives. They tried to whitewash our history, y'all. Let's go to it. Let's read it right here. Let's read it right here. Watch this. It says initially slaves were shipped to Europe, to Europe, to Europe. Wait a minute. Where did they get these slaves from? It wasn't from Africa. It was from the Americas. That's right. It was from the Americas. Oh, y'all forgot about Christopher Columbus, 1492. Y'all forgot about that? 1492. You have an individual named Cristobal Colon, and he went into the area of the Americas, aka Haiti and Dominican Republic, and took the native indigenous, the Taino, the Arawak, and black people to Europe as slaves. They never told me that in Christopher Columbus Day. Yeah, they sure did. So he says initially slaves were shipped to Europe, but in the 16th century, that means they fast forwarded. They skip a couple of stuff, y'all. They skip something. How we all the way in the 16th century? How we get into the 1500s? What happened in the 1400s? What happened in the 1400s? Were there laws passed to initiate the slave trade? Were there laws passed by papal decree to cause people to be put into slavery? I think so. I think so. So let's go to it. Before we continue this article, let's go to this right here. We're going to read African laborers from the New Empire, Iberia, slavery, and the Atlantic world. We're going to read that first. Let's read that. Then we're going to come back to Russia's document about France's colonial policy, because I think we want to run in sequential order. Let's start from the 1400s, work our way up to the 1600s, and let's figure this thing out together. Pope Nicholas V and the Portuguese slave trade. Let me make it big for you all so y'all can read along with me. So this picture right here, this demon explorer, cover of Crónica dos Feitos de Guinea by Gomez Ains de Zurara, published in 1460. So slavery didn't start in the 1600s, y'all. It started in the 1400s. As far as the transatlantic goes, there's some other history going to the Trans-Pacific, but that's not today's topic. Paris, France, Paris, France, courtesy of the Bibliothèque Nationale de France, King Alfonso VII commissioned the Chronica, which was first composed by Zurara in 1453. This chronicle documents the early development of the Portuguese interest in large-scale slave trafficking out of West Africa. Let's go to it. With Portugal's expansion into Western Africa in the 15th century, Iberian merchants began to recognize the economic potential of large-scale slave trafficking enterprise. One of the first to record this sentiment, according to the Portuguese royal chronicler Gomez Anes de Zurara, was a young ship captain named Anton Goncalves. Sorry if I didn't pronounce that right. My Portuguese ain't Portuguese, okay? Who sailed to West Africa in 1441, hoping to acquire seal skins and oil. That's the BS that they always say. They always say, oh, they were just traveling along and they were just trying to find some seal skin, off the west coast of Africa. Why the hell you ain't go to Antarctica or some shit? Why didn't you go to Greenland? Why didn't you? If you're looking for seals, why don't you go all the way to the other side? Go down there where your cousins are, right? Go to the Netherlands or something. After obtaining his cargo, Goncalves called a meeting of the 21 sailors who accompanied him and unveiled his plan to increase their profits. According to Zurara, Goncalves told his crew, "We have already got our cargo, but how fair a thing would it be if we, who have come to this land for a cargo of such petty merchandise, were to meet with good fortune and bring the first captives before the presence of our prince? Now let me read it in the Bible. Let's go to Luke chapter 21, verse 24. Luke chapter 21, verse 24. Everything this dude is saying is in the Bible, y'all. Watch this. What did the Messiah say would happen to the sons and daughters of Jacob? Luke chapter 21, verse 24. And it reads, "And they," referring to the Israelites, "shall fall by the edge of the sword and shall be led away captive, captive, captive into all nations," meaning all nations of the world. All nations of the world. "And Jerusalem shall be trodden down of the Gentiles until the time of the Gentiles be fulfilled." Meaning what? In 70 AD, the Israelites that were living in the land of Northeast Africa, aka the land of Palestine, the land of Israel, the land of Canaan, which belonged to Ham, these black Hebrews were taken from their area and exported out into all nations. This was after 70 AD, meaning this went into the Arab slave trade that lasted for several centuries, and then the European slave trade, which was initiated in the 1400s. Let's read this text again. Right here, he says, were to meet good fortune and bring back the first captives before the presence of our prince. Wait a minute, I'm reading in the Bible that a group of people would be held as captives into all nations. Now I'm reading in a documented history that's on library.cofc.edu that they took captives before the presence of, y'all, you can't make this stuff up. Let's put our critical thinking hats on. Let's put two and two together, y'all. Let's read on. It says, that night, Goncalves led a raiding party, into Cap Blanc, a narrow peninsula between Western Sahara and Mauritania, and kidnapped two Berbers, one man and one woman. Another Portuguese mariner, Nuno Tristayo, and members of his crew soon joined Goncalves. Although the raid resulted in less than a dozen captives, Zorora imagines in his account that Prince Henry of Portugal responded to this enterprise with joy, not so much for the number of captives taken, but for the prospect of other countless captives that could be taken. Hold on, wait a minute, y'all. They make it seem like it's a fun game. We're just having a raiding party. We're just having a party. Let's invite our friends and family to the party and let's get some slaves, buddy. That's the mindset of the wicked. The earth is given into the hand of the wicked. He covereth the faces of the judges thereof. If not, where and who is he? If it's not these folks here, who's the wicked? Job 9:24 is what I'm quoting from. Watch this. While Goncalves' voyage in 1441 is widely considered to mark the beginnings of the transatlantic slave trade, it may also be viewed as an extension of an older tradition of raiding and ransom both shores of the Mediterranean. Upon returning to Portugal, Goncalves treated his captives in accordance with this custom and allowed them to negotiate the terms of their release. Rather than offering a ransom of money, the captives promised to give Goncalves 10 slaves in exchange for their own freedom and safe passage home, meaning exploitation. Exploitation. You give me 10 for the price of one. We're going to get a 2 for the price of one, buddy. According to Royal Chronicler Zorora, the Berbers explained that these new captives would be black and not the lineage of the Moors, but Gentiles. That's the misnomer that they give you, y'all. We're gonna make them Gentiles. but in reality, they were Hebrews. Thus, in 1442, Goncalves returned his Berber captives to Western Sahara, receiving as payment 10 enslaved sub-Saharan, that's the misnomer that they give you, sub-Saharan Africans, whom he then transported back to Portugal for resale. Now, question for the critical thinker. Why is it that when it comes to black folks, they always give you these misnomers? Black, sub-Saharan, we're going to call you by the whole entire continent. We don't know who you are. We're just going to give you a random title. Where is sub-Saharan Europe? Where is sub-Saharan Georgia, Russia? Right? Where is sub-Caucasoidal? They in the Caucasus Mountain, right? Where is sub-Caucasoidal Russia? Where is that at? Where's sub-Appalachian Georgians? Where's that at? Should we start calling European Americans sub-Rocky Mountain Americans? Just some misnomer. You somewhere around there, somewhere around the Rocky Mountains. We don't know where. We're just gonna call you a blanket term Americans. Whether you from Ohio or whether you from South America, we don't give a damn. We're just gonna call you sub-Rocky Mountain Americans. You can't make this stuff up. That's the stupidity of history. They will give you these titles and keep it vague. Watch this. 15th century Iberian legal traditions regulated Christian treatment of Jews, Muslims, and other Christians, clearly delineated, for example, who was enslavable and who was not, meaning they had to pass laws in order to enslave the real Hebrews. And what did they do? They said, we're going to just classify y'all as Gentiles. We're no longer going to call you Israelites. We're no longer going to call you Moors or Muslims. Even if you convert to Christianity, we don't give a damn. We just going to call you Gentiles. That's why in 2025, you see black folks, you ask them, hey, what tribe you from? What's your nationality? Guess what they say? I'm a Gentile. Well, the word gentilis just means nation or ethnos. What ethnicity are you? What nation? Who's your daddy? I don't know. I don't know. Africa, America, African American, my son. No, you are a Jew according to the Bible. Judah mourneth, and the gates thereof languish. They are black, like we just read in Jeremiah chapter 14, verse 2. Watch this. Let's continue on. This is the manipulation of history. Remember, this is in the library. In the library.cofc.edu. So they're not going to blatantly tell you, yeah, we enslaved the Jews. You have to read between the lines. Watch this. It says, for example, who was enslavable and who was not, in contrast. The juridical, I don't know why they put juridical. This is an educational website and they didn't write judicial, right? The juridical status of people who did not fit these categories were more ambiguous. We don't know. Legal and philosophical arguments to address these issues began to evolve during the second half of the 15th century once Portuguese mariners began to return to Iberian with captives acquired in West Africa and West Central Africa. Notably, the treatment of, quote, black Gentiles was addressed in 1452 and 1455 when Pope Nicholas V issued a series of papal bulls that granted a permission slip Portugal the right to enslave Africans. Church leaders argued that slavery served as a natural deterrent and Christianizing influence to barbarous behavior among pagans. Using this logic, the Pope issued a mandate to Portuguese King Alfonso and instructed, quote, to invade, search out, capture, vanquish, and subdue all Saracens and pagans whatsoever, and to reduce their persons to perpetual slavery. But what you don't realize is that in 1492, this same king, King Alfonso, had a decree to kick out a certain population out of their territories of Portugal. I wonder who. I wonder who. Let's find out. Let's go to another. Let's go to another link and let's type 1492 Alfonso Decree. 1492 Alfonso Decree. Let's go to that. Let's go to that, and we're going to find out what did these popes and these sovereigns do. Watch this. Watch this. This is for educational purposes only, y'all. Look at this right here. Look at this right here. It says, in 1492, Ferdinand and Isabella of Spain issued the Alhambra Decree, which ordered the expulsion of all Jews from their kingdoms. Y'all, Spain and Portugal is on the same landmass. Hello. Spain and Portugal is on the, it's called the Iberian Peninsula for those that are not too fast. I went to public school. You got to explain this to me. Spain and Portugal is on the same landmass, y'all. Watch this. This decree forced Spanish Jews to convert to Christianity or leave the country. The Jews were given 4-month deadline, and those who did not convert or leave faced summary execution. The expulsion significantly impacted the Spanish economy and culture, as the Jewish economy was vital part of it, and their departure left a lasting legacy. Where did they go? Where did they hide to? They left from Spain and Portugal. Where did they go? Are they in the trunk of my car? Are they hiding? Are they hiding in a box? Are they in the closet like some of these folks in the rainbow community? Let's look up this thing real quick. Let's look this up. Where let me look on a map. Maybe I need a map. Portugal and Africa. Let's look at a map real quick. Let's see if we can look this thing up. Let's see if we can look this thing up right here, right here. Hold on a second. Hold on a second. Wait a second. Yo, Portugal is literally the street. This you can't make this stuff up, y'all. This is Portugal right here in the green. And this is Africa right here. This is, wait a second. Let me zoom in real quick. This is Portugal right here. This is Spain in the gray right here where the mouse is. This is Portugal right here. And Africa is right, just right across, y'all. Here's another one. Just so you can see how close it is. Spain, bam, right there. I'm sorry for the pixelation. Portugal, bam, right here, right next door. Africa, right here. Y'all, all you had to do was hop on a boat and go, you're right in Africa. Where did all these Jews end up in Africa? Where did they go? Did they disappear? Or did they get trampled along into West Africa? West, northwest, then we get to west, trying to escape from Portugal and Spain. Yeah, let's put 2 and 2 together. Is this beginning to make sense, y'all? I hope it is. I hope it is, y'all. I hope it's making sense to you. I hope it's making sense. Let's go back. Let's go back. So the Portuguese, Spain, and the Pope were instrumental in doing what? Placing the sons and daughters of Jacob in captivity, y'all. Let's read it. It says, to invade, search out, capture, vanquish, and subdue all Saracens. Saracens was a code word for black folks. Saracens was a code for black folks and pagans whatsoever, and to reduce their persons to perpetual slavery, and to apply and appropriate to himself his successors, the kingdoms, dukedoms, counties, principalities, dominions, possessions, and goods, and to convert them to his or their use and profit. Y'all, let's put 2 and 2 together. This is how your mama became Catholic. This how your grandmama then became Catholic. Oh, blessed the blessed Pope just passed away. To hell with that demon. His ancestors authorized slavery. This was the initiation stage of the transatlantic war. You see, they use soft terms. They don't call it human trafficking on a global level. They don't call it human exploitation. It's just trade. We're just trading them like a bunch of damn baseball cards. You can't make this stuff up. So, y'all, do you understand why this information is important, y'all? Why they try to hide it? This is evidence of the Afro-Hebraic presence, not only in the scriptures, but also how colonialism and religion, that was point number 3, remember? How colonialism and religion did what? Shape and distort historical narratives. Boom, drop the mic on that, baby. Drop the mic on that. Wow. They never told me that in church. My pastor never told me that in church. Portugal is right next door to Africa, y'all. They kicked out all the Hebrews out of Spain and Portugal. And where is Spain and Portugal? Let's look at the map again, because I went to public school. I ain't too fast. Spain and Portugal is right here. Africa is right here. So if I had to leave out of Spain and Portugal, because they'll say leave or die, where would I go? I would just take a boat and go right across the street into Africa. Into Africa. Y'all, the original Hebrews came out of the continent of Africa. We showed it to you in the Bible. So now while they were living in Spain and Portugal, the monarchs and the religious folks was like, get up out of our land, convert to this religion, or are you going to go into slavery? So now let's go back to the Russian document. Let's go back to the Russian document. Now we went to the past. Now we're bringing it up to from the 1400s to the 1600s, right? So let's read this whole document right here. I hope this information is rewarding for you because they know who we are. They tried to hide this, but you can't hide the truth, baby. You can't hide it no more. Watch this. Initially, slaves were shipped to Europe, but in the 16th century, when Spanish colonies were established in the West Indies, wait a minute, that's going into Christopher Columbus, Hernan Cortez, Ponce de Leon, right? They began to transport Africans, that's the misnomer again. That's the whole entire concept. We just gonna name you a whole entire concept. No, these are the Hebrews to the New World. In the 17th century, large-scale development of gold and silver mines were launched in the Caribbean and both Americas, which were then the main areas of European colonial activity, where also tobacco, sugar, and cotton plantations were expanding, thus bringing about the urgent issue of cheap labor. Oh, Russia had to politely say this. Oh, there was an urgent problem. We had an urgent problem with cheap labor. The easiest way to solve this issue was to import. Notice it doesn't say enslave. Notice it doesn't say exploit. It says import African slaves into the colonies owned by Europeans, including France. Point number 1, they don't own jack diddly squat. They stole America. World War I wasn't what a bunch of Europeans blowing each other up in the 1900s. World War I was in 1400s when 7 different countries from Europe colonized and invaded a land that don't belong to them, called Arsareth, aka the Americas. And who was living in the Americas? Both Northern Kingdom and Southern Kingdom of Israel that traveled there during the time of Assyria. Y'all, that's some hidden history. I recommend reading 2nd Ezra chapter 13 to get a better understanding of what I'm saying. If you get it, you get it. If you don't, you don't. So notice this is saying here that they took a large-scale operation of gold and silver mines, launched it in the Caribbean islands and both the Americas, and then set up plantation systems of tobacco, sugar, and cotton. Now, let's see if this is in the Bible. Let's go to Deuteronomy chapter 28. Let's see if these key factors are in the Bible. Let's go to Deuteronomy 28. Let's read what happened to the original Hebrews of the Bible. Y'all, when we read this, you're going to know for sure this is not talking about Polish people that converted to a religion called Judaism. Watch this. Deuteronomy chapter 28 and verse 15. It says, "But it shall come to pass, if you will not listen or hearken unto the voice of the Lord thy God, to observe to do all his commandments which I command you this day, that all these curses shall come upon thee and overtake thee. Cursed shall thou be in the city, and cursed shall thou be in the field, in the field, in the field." What's another word for the field? Plantations. What group of people were cursed in the worst conditions all throughout the cities? Who lives in the ghettos and the slums? The Jews. The ghettos and the slums are the places where the Jews reside. Who are the Jews? The Israelites. Who are they? Blacks, Hispanics, Native Americans, so-called Africans. So-called Africans. Y'all, why did we not know that the ghetto was for the Jews and now it's black folks that live in the ghetto? Black folks in the ghetto. The term ghetto literally is a place that was reserved for Jew. Watch this, watch this. Let me show it to you. Let me show it to you for the kids in the back. People lost. Let me show it to you. Let me show it to you. Boom, boom, boom. Here we go. Look on the screen. What does it say? It says ghetto. Number one, a poor urban area occupied primarily by a minority group or groups. Number two, historical, the Jewish quarter in the city. Now, right under the Jewish, where it says Jewish quarter, it says resembling a characteristic of a ghetto of its inhabitants, especially with relation to African American culture. Wait a minute. Under the direct definition of ghetto, it's referring to Jews and it's referring to African Americans. That's odd. That's strange. What a coinky dink. Y'all, what is the name of today's episode? They know who we are, revealing the hidden truth of Black history and the Afro-Hebraic diaspora. Some of y'all heads should be spinning right now. Some of y'all should be like, yo, what's going on here? Why they never told me that in church? Why I never learned that in Black History Month? Y'all, they know who we are. I'm gonna say it like we say it in the ghetto. They know who you is. Let's read on. It says, gold and silver. This is the Russian document that we're reading on the Foreign Affairs website, Foreign Policy 2024 document. It says, gold and silver was launched in the Caribbean and both Americas, which were then the main areas of the European colonial activity, where also tobacco, sugar, and cotton plantations were expanding, thus bringing about the urgent need of cheap labor. Now, let's read the Bible real quick and let's figure out, does the Bible talk about someone trying to acquire cheap labor? Let's see. Does the Bible talk about someone trying to acquire cheap labor? Let's find out. Is there predictions? We call it history. The Bible calls it prophecy. Are there predictions in the text where we can see literally where individuals were placed into captivity and they were forced to work for free? Is this in the Bible? We have to research this thing, y'all. That's why I always say, in the age of information, ignorance is a choice. Most Christians don't study the Bible from a history perspective. They only study it from a religious perspective. But now it's time for us to learn the truth, y'all. Watch this. Let's read it out of the Bible. Watch this. It says, woe, Jeremiah chapter 22, verse 13. Woe unto him that builds his house, House of Representatives, House of the Senate, White House, by unrighteousness, and his chambers, chambers of Congress, chambers of commerce, by wrong, that uses his neighbor's service without wages, without wages, without wages, and gives him not for his work. Y'all, does this sound like people trying to get and acquire cheap labor? Write a 1 in the chat for yes, put a 2 in the chat if you're confused. Write a 1 in the comment section. We got a comment. Let's see here. It says the Vatican, most evil institution on earth. You got that right, Michael. You got that right. Put a 1 in the chat for yes. Put a 2 in the chat if you're confused. If we just read out of the Russian document in regards to France's colonial experience, let's read it again for the kids in the back. Let's go to the document again. We're going to show it to you. Let's go to the document again and let's see what the text says. Because we have to do a comparative analysis. We call it history. The Bible calls it what? Prophecy. So we're reading a historical document and then we're making a comparative analysis to the text of scriptures and see the prophetic relevance to what we're reading. And all we got to do is ask the question, who did this happen to? Watch this. Here's the quote. It says, initially slaves were shipped to Europe, but in the 16th century, when Spanish colonies were established in the West Indies, that's Haiti, Jamaica, Puerto Rico, Barbados, Trinidad and Tobago, parts of Florida, Belize, they were taking slaves back and forth all over this place. Mexico, right? Transport Africans to the New World in the 17th century, large-scale development of gold and silver mines was launched in the Caribbean and both Americas, which were then the main areas of European colonial activity. That's what they call it. They want to sugarcoat it. It's European colonial activity. They don't call it over exploitation. They don't call it resource grape, where also tobacco, sugar, and cotton plantations were expanding, thus bringing about the urgent issue of cheap labor. Question for the critical thinker. Does this sound exactly like what we just read in the Bible, y'all? Does this sound like exactly what we just read in the Bible? They wanted cheap labor, cheap labor, cheap labor. We just read it in the Bible, y'all. We just read it in the Bible. Y'all, they know who we are. They know who we are. Let's continue. The enslavement and trade of the Dark Continent inhabitants lasted for over 4 centuries. The systematic slave trade is believed to have been initiated by the Portuguese, who were the first Europeans to reach the western shores of Africa, and then its other parts. We just read that in that other article dealing with Pope Nicholas. Y'all remember that? We just read that in that other article, right? So we're seeing here that a lot of information truly has been hidden from us, and we have no idea the magnitude of what information has been left out of the history books. Watch this. The systematic slave trade is believed to have been initiated by the Portuguese, who were the first Europeans to reach the western shores of Africa and then its other parts. Most Africans were taken from the Gold Coast, present day Ghana, and the coastal areas of Togo, Benin, and western Nigeria, the Niger Basin and Delta, Nigeria, Cameroon, The coastal areas of present-day Liberia, Sierra Leone, and Senegal, and from the Congo and Angola, slave markets sprang up in European cities. The total number of slaves, for example, from the Congo alone, for example, was estimated to be at about 1 million. That's just at the Congo, y'all. That's just at the Congo. So wait a minute. We're reading about the Gold Coast, the Slave Coast, and all of this, right? What group of people were on the Gold Coast and the Slave Coast? I wonder what group of people were on the Slave Coast? Look at this right here. Look at this right here. Here is a map of the Kingdom of Judah. Notice this map from 1747. Notice it says right here, Kingdom of Judah. Kingdom of Judah. Let me zoom in for the kids in the back. Let me make it big. Let's see it on the screen. Kingdom of Judah. KM, Kingdom OF of Judah. Ajuda. Or Wida, aka Slave Coast. Notice what it says here. Jews. What does the Bible say? The Bible says the Jews will be scattered into all nations, and we're reading about the Jews in Africa. Wida, Judah, 1747. Remember, they said the Gold Coast, that's right around here on the left side. The Gold Coast, the Slave Coast, was literally called the Kingdom. Why would a group of Europeans call this territory that they mapped the Kingdom of Judah? Why would they call it the Kingdom of Judah? Was it just they like the name? The name Judah just sounds really nice, huh? We're just gonna randomly call a place in Africa a kingdom of the Kingdom of Judah. What's going on here? They know who we are, y'all. They've been lying for centuries, but the jig is up. In the age of information, ignorance is a choice. Let's look at this document real quick. Kingdom of Judah, 1747. Ouida is best known, or Judah is best known for its central role in the slave trade during the 17th, 18th, and 19th centuries, during which time nearly 1 million individuals, we just read that in the document from Russia about France's colonial policy in Africa. So that means Russia knows this thing. Why the hell you think they went to war? Why do you think the war with the Ukrainians that converted to a religion called Judaism is just a mistake? You think the fact that the Russian president revealed in 2024 black icons of Jesus, Mother Mary, you think that's a coinky dink? At the same time, while they're at a war, they're showing you images of Jesus, Mother Mary as black. Come on, y'all. When the Christians in America found this out, man, it was burning Bibles in front of the churches. You can't make this stuff up. You can't make this stuff up, y'all. They was burning Bibles in front of the churches, y'all. They were burning Bibles in front of the churches, y'all. You can't make this stuff up, man. Let me show you the headline so you know I'm not making it up. Let me just show you the headline real quick. Yeah, watch this. Look at these headlines real quick. Can everybody see this? Let me get a couple of ones in the chat just to make sure y'all can see this. Let me put a one in the chat on the chat real quick, just so I know y'all can see this thing. Look at it. Look at the headline. Russian President Putin has revealed the new biblical icon, Black African Diary. Rare Russian icons on display in Moscow. Vladimir Putin reveals painting of Black Jesus, Pan-African Lifestyle 2024. That was just last year. Y'all, you can't make this stuff up. There's a bunch of videos on it. Russia opens century-old cellars and reveals Black, here it is, recent 15th and 14th and 15th century paintings revealed by Russia prove that Jesus was not Eurocentric, but black, black, black. He and his mother and the people around him were black. You can't make this stuff up. Y'all, this is why I say in the age of information, ignorance is a choice. Almost 1 million views. 870,000 views. Less than 200 away from a million views. There's no way, y'all, the jig is up. The jig is up. You can't hide it no more, Blanche. Russia was like, hey, we're just throwing up all the chips on the table now. What do you got? Show me your deck of cards. We're just gonna put it all on the table, baby. Let's go. You got your revolver ready. Let's go. Whoever wins this game, ready or not, here we go. Bop, 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 bop. Now everybody going to war. Russia, Ukraine, the blue and white flag with the Arabs. They was like, we don't give a damn no more. Let's just go. Let's just duke it out. The jig is up. Somebody threw the damn table up during the card game. Now everybody fighting. Let's go back to this article. I know for Forefront Radio, if you're new to this channel, I am very sarcastic, but I love information. But I try to be lighthearted because I know it's a lot of serious information. So I try to be lighthearted and be sarcastic at times just to make people laugh. But it's with well intentions. Let's take this information seriously, though. Let's continue. It says right here, the Portuguese, English, Dutch, and French all constructed forts in the city to protect their interest in slaving. The Portuguese reached the town that they call Ajuda in 1580, and the Portuguese fort of Saint John Batista de Ajuda, in English, St. John the Baptist of Judah Fort, now housing a museum, dates from 1721 and remained with Portugal until July of 1961. Y'all know why this date is important, 1961? It's important because a lot of times when we get into these conversations, many people from various communities will say misstatements like, oh, get over it. It was such a long time ago. Notice, they never say this about European folks that lived during World War II. They never tell them, hey, get over it. It was 1945 already. We already in a new generation. They never say that at all. But here it is. It's documented that the fort called Judah, that the Portuguese owned, was until 1960. Some of y'all got parents that was born in 1961. That's how young some of y'all are on TikTok. Some of y'all got cousins and uncles and nieces and nephews that were born around 1961. Some of y'all got parents that were born, and some of y'all were born around 1961. So what's going on here? Why do we not know this information? Let's read on. It says, this is a small fortress built by the Portuguese in the city of Ouida or Judah on the coast of Dahomey, originally Ajuda from Ouida on the Atlantic coast of modern Benin. Modern Benin, that's in Africa, reached by the Portuguese in 1580, after which it grew around the slave trade, for which the slave coast was already renowned. The fort, built in land given to Portugal by the king of Dahomey, remained under Portuguese control from 1721 until 1961. Here is a little history that may shed even more light on the matter of the house of Judah, and was allowed to come back to their own land after the Babylonian captivity, but like Northern Kingdom, they strayed from Yahweh and were unfaithful. Violence, hostility, and tension followed them through the Hellenistic kingdom, and Judah, known as Judea by that time, were under Roman rule by the end of the Hasmonean era around 73 BC to 63 BC. These attacks were nothing, however, compared to the siege of the Hebrews Hebrews that was endured from 66 to 73 AD. Some say CE now to try to rule out Christ. And specifically, the siege of Jerusalem in 70 AD was especially horrific. Yahushua or Yahushai or Jesus prophesied, meaning predicted, about the destruction of Jerusalem and the Israelites being enslaved when he walked the earth. Now, here is the quote. Here is the quote directly from the Bible, from the words of the Messiah. And we're going to read this and we're going to start to ask questions. So I want you to pay attention, listen close to this. It says, quote, "And when you see Jerusalem surrounded by armies, then you will know that the time of its destruction has arrived. Then those in Judea must flee to the hills. Those in Jerusalem must get out, and those out in the country should not return to the city. For those will be days of Yahweh's vengeance, and the prophetic words of the scriptures will be fulfilled." What prophetic words? Deuteronomy 28, Leviticus 26, the book of Jeremiah, the book of Isaiah, prophecies of the minor prophets like Amos, Zechariah, Micah. All of these things Daniel said what had to come true. All of these scriptures had to come true. Quote, "How terrible it will be for pregnant women and for nursing mothers in those days, for there will be disaster in the land and great anger against this people. They will be killed by the sword," meaning what? The Romans are going to come in, they're going to invade the land, and they're going to conquer it through a siege. "They will be killed by the sword or sent away as captives to all the nations of the world." To all the nations of the world. To all the nations of the world. "And Jerusalem will be trampled down by the Gentiles until the time of the Gentiles comes to an end." Luke chapter 20, verse 20 to 24. Now, question for the critical thinker. I want you to pay attention to this question. I want you to write it in the comment section. Did Polish people that converted to a religion called Judaism, did they ever go into captivity, aka slavery, in all nations? Put an N in the chat for no. Put a Y in the chat for yes. If your answer is yes, give me the date, give me the news article, give me the link where I can read about Polish people that converted to a religion called Judaism, were taken as slaves to Brazil. Give me the date and the article where Polish people that converted to a religion called Judaism were taken as slaves to Haiti. Give me the link where Polish people that converted to a religion called Judaism were taken as slaves in Florida, Georgia, Louisiana, Mississippi, New York, New Brunswick, Nova Scotia, Australia, Nigeria, Azerbaijan, Asia, Europe, and in all nations. This also applies to the Ukrainians that converted to a religion called Judaism. This also applies to American Jewish communities. This also applies to Russians that converted to Judaism and all European Jews. Show me your history. Give me the link. Give me the book. Give me the dates where I can read about them taken into captivity in all nations. Now, if your answer is no, you can't find a source, you can't find it in an encyclopedia, you can't find it in a dictionary, and you don't recall any time in class at university or in school where you hear about Jewish communities going into captivity, then this Bible ain't talking about them, baby. It's all right if you're a religious convert. We ain't got no problem with you. You want to be a religious convert? Okay, fine. But we still got to read the Bible and say, who did this happen to? If the shoe don't fit, make sure you get some sandals. So, what group of people went into captivity in all nations? Like we're reading in this historical document. Like we're reading in this historical book known as the Bible. So, we just read about the enslavement of people that were taken into places like Senegal, Benin, Nigeria, Togo, Congo, and brought by slave markets in European cities, right? Congo alone had over 1 million. And now we're reading a biblical quote that's saying the same thing. The transatlantic slave trade is in the Bible. Watch this. Now, Yahushua or Yahushai, also known as Jesus, walked the earth from about 1 to 33 AD. And he is prophesying about the future enslavement of the Hebrews, aka Israelites. Josephus, also known as Joseph ben Matthias or Flavius Josephus, a witness at the time of the siege on Jerusalem, claims that over 1.1 million were unalived during the initial siege alone, of which a majority were Hebrews. Y'all, you're not going to learn this in the education systems of the world. Western civilization will make this a paragraph of a discussion. They won't dig into in depth. Watch this. 97,000 Hebrews were captured and enslaved, and others fled to the Mediterranean areas and Africa for refuge. Meaning what? History repeats itself. It's a repetitive cycle going over and over and over. The Israelites were told by God, if you listen to my commandments, you're going to be the top ruling nation on the earth. But if you don't listen to my law, generational curses would fall upon you as a people. Those generational curses included captivity in all nations. And even Jesus himself said, look, you're going to have to go through these predictions before I come back. Before I come back, you're going to go into captivity. But don't lose hope. After a few years, 2,000 years going to come by. We need more people to get their mind right. And afterwards, I'm going to come back and save you and deliver you. This is revealing the hidden truth of Black history and the Afro-Hebraic diaspora. This explains how and why specific demographics were targeted to be addressed and placed on plantation systems all across the globe. It wasn't just the United States, so don't blame just America. It was a global system. All nations had their part, including China, including Korea, including Asia, including Russia, including Europe, including Africa, including the Americas, including Australia. They know who we are. They know it. They know it. Let's continue. They know who we are, y'all. Let's continue where we left off. Right here, it says, during this terrible period of suffering, there were massive starvations, and some Israelites even resulted in cannibalism. There were so many crucifixions in this area during this time that wood became scarce. Eusebius, a church historian that wrote in the early 300s AD, quotes Josephus by saying, quote, and as Titus went around and saw the trenches filled with the dead, he groaned aloud and raising his hands called God to witness that this was not his doing, even though he was responsible, even though it was his fault. You see, a lot of times people don't want to take accountability. That's a famous social media term right now, right? Accountability. People don't want to take accountability of their actions, right? America says we're not paying reparations. You know why? Because if America pays, that means everybody else on the planet got to pay too. You understand? That's why they're not going to pay reparations, because they know that if they pay reparations, everybody is going to have to pay. Everybody going to pay, right? Here's the answer to our earlier question when we asked, did Polish people go into slavery in all nations? And Peter Ferguson replied, no. Thank you for answering honestly, Peter. We appreciate you. Thank you so much for answering honestly. A lot of people, when we read this information, all of a sudden they suffer from some sort of amnesia, as if history is not history. Let's continue on. It says, so when the conqueror Titus was disturbed by what he saw, enough to proclaim that it was not his doing from the war, and even refused the wreath of victory, and this coming from the same man that opted to destroy the famed temple in Jerusalem. You see that? So we covered the document of France's colonial policy in Africa, and we just showed you the parallels. Now we're going to read this chart briefly, and this chart is going to help us understand something significant. What this chart is going to help us understand is that there are powerful insights. This brings us to our last portion of today's discussion. Powerful insights that challenge mainstream doctrine. This right here is going to be the final part of our discussion to understand something very significant. Okay, that's point number 4. Let's get into it. This chart shows that the true Israelites were scattered in all directions. The enslaved persons that were brought to America are the descendants of those biblical-based Israelites that were dispersed into Africa many, many, many years ago. And this took not just 400 years, but this was approximately 2,500 years ago. Watch this. Point number 1. Point number 1. Cyrene, that's Libya, y'all. Israelites attempted to establish a Hebrew African empire. Roman suppression forced further Israelite migrations into Africa. Number 2, Elephantine, 600. Israelites established a garrison around 70 CE. Romans conquered and enslaved over 100,000 Israelites. Number 3, Tanmented, this is Algeria, 1492. Ottoman Muslims destroyed a 1,000-year-old Hebrew settlement. Number 4, Ethiopia, 955. Menelik, son of Solomon, and the Queen of Sheba established an Israelite dynasty that lasted about 3,000 years. Number 5, Uganda. A lineage of 33 kings tracing their lineage, their bloodline to King David according to a Ugandan tradition. Number 6, 640 CE or AD. Israelite Queen Dia Kahena organizes an army to defend against Roman and Arab incursions into North Africa. Number 7, Kazembe, 1831. Afro-Shemitic people whose kings wore a Mitri head wrap resembling the Israelite high priest. Number 8, Marrakesh, 1000 CE to 1500 CE. Hebrews allowed to practice the Torah during the Islamic period. Number 9, Tangier, 1150 CE. Israelite sanctuary established by Beni Musa. Beni means sons of, Musa means Moses, sons of Moses. Number 10, Kamnoria, medieval Hebrew state north of the Senegal River. Y'all remember when we just read in the French document, in the Russian document rather, about French colonial exploitation? And one of the areas they touched was where? Senegal. Number 11, Ghana, Hebrew dynasty 300 CE Hebrew dynasty established by Za el Yemeni last about 1,000 years, finally known as the Songhai Empire. Y'all, when I went to school, I never learned anything about the Songhai Empire, nothing about the Mali Empire, nothing at all. And I went to a predominantly black school. I went to a Hispanic school as well during high school, and I went to various colleges, and they never touched on the kingdom of Songhai. Never learned this during social studies, never learned this during history class, world history class, definitely not during American history or civics. They never said during Black History Month that the descendants of enslaved persons are Hebrew. They always gave the misnomer black, African, Negro, colored, people of color, just random. The jig is up, y'all. The jig is up. The lie won't hold up no more. Independent investigators have found the truth. Number 12, Lamlam, 12th century Hebrew kingdom, 200 miles east of Timbuktu, Al Idrisi. Number 13, Niger River, Niger River, 7 princes descended from the kings of ancient Israelites, Fatasha tradition. Now I'm going to show y'all something about the Niger River, y'all. I'm going to show you something about the Niger River. Let me show you something real quick, y'all. Bear with me. Let me show it to you real quick in the Bible, and we're going to close off with our discussion. Let me show you something about Niger. Let's look at this real quick. Let's go to the book of Acts in the New Testament, book of Acts, chapter 13, and we're going to read verse 1. Check this out. Check this out. Now, there were in the church, meaning direct disciples of Christ, direct apostles, leaders, that was at Antioch, certain prophets and teachers, as Barnabas and Simeon, that was called Niger. 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 You got prophets and teachers out of the church that was called Niger, as Barnabas and Simeon, that was called Niger, and Lucius of Cyrene, that's in Libya, that's in Africa, and Manaen, which had been brought up with Herod, that's an Edomite, and Saul. So wait a minute, y'all. You got direct prophets and teachers that were called Niger. Question for the critical thinker: is there a country in Africa called Nigeria? Yes, there is. Is there a river in the continent of Africa called the River Niger? Yes, there is. So we literally just read, y'all. Oh, I'm sorry. I didn't even put it on the screen. I apologize. Can y'all see it on the screen now? I apologize. My bad. I thought I did. I thought I put it on the screen. Let's read it again. Research Alexander Pushkin. I got a video on Alexander Pushkin, Peter. I got a video on Alexander Pushkin. I really do. Check out my TikTok channel. If you type the Forefront Media on TikTok, I got a video on Alexander Pushkin's ancestor. Peter, what's his name? Pedro something. Peter something. I can't remember the name off the top of my head. But yes, I'm familiar with Mr. Alexander Pushkin's ancestry, and his forefather was a black man, and he is also melanated. So thank you for sharing that, Peter. Appreciate you. So yes, we just read about the Niger River in the document that I pulled up, and now in the scriptures, we're reading in the scriptures how it says literally, now there were in the church that was at Antioch certain prophets and teachers, as Barnabas and Simeon, that was called Niger. So direct prophets. Prophets come from the children of Israel, y'all. There ain't no Baptist prophet. There ain't no Catholic prophet. There ain't no 7-day LNG white prophet. The real prophets of God are the Israelites. There ain't no Islamic prophets. You got false prophets out there, but the real prophets come directly from the sons and daughters of Jacob, because God said in the book of Joel, your sons and your daughters will prophesy. And we read about that in the book of Acts. Right now, prophets and teachers called what? Niger. Niger. Wow. Wow. Y'all, Remarkable information that we cover today. Remarkable information that we cover today, y'all. They know who we are. Take a moment, y'all, to donate to the Forefront Radio. This information that we present, y'all, this information is so sensitive that social media tries to block, tries to ban, tries to prevent anyone from talking about this. Right now, you have laws passed in France where they're literally telling you you can't teach this in France. Educational systems that are established to wake up the Afro diaspora in France, guess what? They're telling them, don't teach that. You can't talk about it. We don't want you to discuss it at all. They're being banned. Many people that this information I'm presenting in places like France, they want to imprison you. Y'all, they know who we are. They know who we are. So please support independent media. Support the Forefront Radio through donations through either Cash App or PayPal. It's APHIELLEVI right at the bottom of the screen. Through Cash App or PayPal, your donations go to assist us in teaching the truth here in the continent of Africa. I am currently in Africa, traveling as much as I can, and your support will assist me in doing outdoor lectures, meeting university heads, establishing podcasts, connecting with the people in the continent to teach this truth, y'all. For centuries, this information has been hidden. For centuries, they have prevented our people from knowing the truth of who they are. Who is going to stand up for God? Who is going to stand up for biblical-based transparency? Who is going to stand up for truth? Are you going to stand? Will you support those that stand for their people? Will you support those that stand up against the deception of this modern society? Support our mission. Support this truth. Support us in our efforts to teach the diaspora in Africa. Because guess what, y'all? In some places in Africa, they don't even know about the transatlantic slave systems, y'all. There's people that never heard about slavery in Americas, y'all. They just got out of colonization themselves. They fought for independence in Africa, and some of them fought and gained independence in the 1950s, 1960s, 1970s, 1980s. They have no clue what happened, let alone understanding that we're the real Hebrews. Their indoctrination lasted longer than those in the Americas. They're just getting out of captivity, and they have an affinity with those that colonize them. It's time for us to wake up and learn the truth, because the Bible says you're going to know the truth, and the truth will make you free. Thank you for listening to the Forefront Radio. If you haven't subscribed to our channel, follow us here on YouTube, Spotify, iHeartRadio, TikTok, and many other platforms.